When you read through the ancient genealogies in the Bible, you start to notice this really grim, predictable rhythm. A guy lives for like 900 years, he has some kids, and then he dies, over and over. But there's this one man who just completely shatters that pattern. His name is Enoch, and his story? It doesn't end with death. It ends with a mystery that has kept people talking for thousands of years. So let's dive into this enigma.
And he was not, for God took him. That's it. 4 little words that open up one of the Bible's biggest, most fascinating puzzles. It's so abrupt, so mysterious, it's totally unique. What in the world could that possibly mean?
And that is the million-dollar question, right? Was he physically beamed up? Was it some kind of spiritual transformation? This one single cryptic verse launched an entire universe of stories and speculation that went on to shape Jewish, Christian, and mystical traditions for centuries to come.
Okay, so to really feel the impact of this, you have to see it in context. Chapter 5 of Genesis is basically this long, long list. And for almost every single person, the story ends the same way. And he died. It's this relentless drumbeat of mortality. Adam lived, and he died. Seth lived, and he died. Enos lived, and he died. Then all of a sudden, we get to Enoch, and bam, the pattern just shatters. He doesn't die. He is taken.
So here's our game plan for digging into this. We're going to start with that core biblical mystery. Then we'll explore the incredible lost books of Enoch. We'll see how he actually becomes an angel, how some saw him as a mystical replacement for Adam. And then we'll check out a wild story where he takes an entire city to heaven with him. And finally, we'll look at all the different faces of Enoch throughout history.
So, ancient writers couldn't just leave a mystery this good alone. You can't just leave a cliffhanger like that hanging, right? That tiny verse in Genesis became this creative seed, and it sparked this absolute explosion of new texts that gave Enoch this amazing backstory, a cosmic mission, and a destiny. This is where we get the so-called lost books of Enoch.
And most of this happened during what we call the Second Temple period. You've got to think of this as a time of immense religious creativity in Judaism. It's those centuries between the Old and New Testaments. People were wrestling with huge questions about good, evil, and divine justice, and they started looking at their old sacred figures in new ways. And Enoch, this mysterious guy, was the perfect candidate for a major story expansion. So in these new texts, Enoch is no longer just some righteous dude. Oh no. He gets a major promotion. A whole bunch of them, actually. He becomes the heavenly scribe, the guy who keeps all of God's records. He's a visionary who gets to tour heaven and see visions of the end of the world. He becomes a teacher of secret cosmic knowledge. And, this is a big one, he becomes a mediator between heaven and earth.
And if you're thinking, okay, but these are just some old, forgotten books, get this. This quote right here, it's from the New Testament, from the book of Jude. But it's not quoting Genesis or any other part of the Old Testament. It is a direct quote from the non-biblical book of Enoch. That tells you just how important and widely read these stories were, even by early Christians.
But the writers didn't stop there. They took Enoch's story to its most radical, mind-bending conclusion. He wasn't just a visitor to heaven. In some of these traditions, he actually becomes a heavenly being himself.
It's a process called apotheosis, which is a fancy word for a human being elevated to divine status. And in texts like 3 Enoch, we get the whole play-by-play. He ascends to heaven while he's still alive. His flesh is literally turned to flame. He's given these incredible garments of pure light, and then he gets a new name and his own throne in heaven.
He becomes Metatron. And in Jewish mysticism, Metatron is, he's a big deal. He's one of the most powerful angels there is, like God's celestial chief of staff. He's the main scribe, the stand-in for the divine presence. Think about it. The man who walked with God is now literally standing in for God. It's an incredible idea.
Now, this mystical logic leads to a really fascinating question. Why Enoch? What's the point of this specific, incredible transformation? Well, some scholars have argued that Enoch's journey serves this profound theological purpose, to mystically reverse the fall of Adam.
Just take a look at this comparison table. It lays it out perfectly. Look at the garments row. Old traditions taught that before the fall, Adam literally wore garments of light. After, he wore garments of skin. What does Enoch get as Metatron? A garment of glory and light. Or check out physical size. Adam was supposedly created with this cosmic size that filled the world, but it was shrunk down after the fall. And Enoch, he gets elongated to once again fill the world. He is, in essence, hitting the reset button. He's regaining for humanity that glorious state that was lost in Eden.
But wait, there's more. That's not the only way Enoch's story was expanded.
In a completely different tradition, found in Restoration scripture, his journey isn't something he does alone. It's a collective achievement. And when I say this story was expanded, I am not kidding. The narrative just explodes, going from just those 4 verses we started with in Genesis to over 114 verses in the Book of Moses. That gives us this incredibly detailed saga of Enoch's life and his mission on earth.
So in this version, Enoch is a prophet who's called to preach to a really wicked world. But instead of just saving himself, he gathers a whole community of believers. Together, they build a city called Zion, a society so unified and righteous there was no poverty. And because of their collective faith, the entire city, not just Enoch, gets taken up into heaven. His greatness here isn't just about his personal holiness, it's about his ability to lead an entire people to this incredible destiny.
So when we pull all of these different threads together, what we see is that Enoch isn't just one single figure. He's more like a vessel that different traditions have poured their highest ideals into over thousands of years.
We start with a simple, righteous man from Genesis, a person whose relationship with God was so close that he just bypassed death.
Then he becomes the celestial scribe, the ultimate insider who knows all the secrets of heaven and the ultimate fate of humanity.
From there, in these mystical traditions, he undergoes the ultimate upgrade into Metatron, a powerful cosmic archangel.
His journey then becomes the blueprint for the ideal mystic, a human soul ascending to achieve a perfect union with the divine.
And finally, he's the great prophet leader who doesn't just go to heaven alone, but builds a society so perfect that it gets to go with him.
Which really brings us back to our big question. The righteous man, the scribe, the angel, the city builder. How? How does a figure who's barely a footnote in the Bible become the hero of all these grand, epic, and varied stories? I think it's because his story, the story of a human who walked so closely with God that he transcended death, taps into one of our oldest and deepest hopes as human beings,